So here's where this gets really, I think, interesting and kind of fun. Um, the One of the first instincts you might have is, well, if I need this thing to be some kind of a tubular structure, right? Something that actually has depth, something that creates a real architectural enclosure. I might, at this point, want to offset the surface and then start smoothing it out, right? I don't know. Let's give it a shot and take a look at it at least. So I do offset surface, and I can select this whole body, right? Hit enter. And if you don't know what offset surface does, is it just takes the direction of the surfaces, and if you have a poly surface, the direction of that poly surface should match as it turns a corner. So either everything's going out or everything's going in. You can click on flip all, and it'll change it so that everything's going to go inward. And then change how far it goes in as well. So change your distance maybe to something a little bit more palatable, like a half a foot for now. And then you can hit enter. Actually, maybe a foot would actually be okay.
I think you said inch. I want to say.
Maybe. It probably should be a foot though, because I forgot. I made mine a lot bigger than my test one that I did before. Yeah, foot's probably good. Yeah. So, you know, to put it plainly, this is generally going to be a pretty clean, you know, modeled surface. But what's going to happen if you do this now is that anytime I want to create, say, a rounded corner, like what you're seeing here, I then need to do it on the inside and outside edge. And ultimately what that's going to look like is this. I'm going to do a fillet surface. And I can select a particular radius. In this case, I'll make it a little bit larger. So my outside radius will be 2 feet, and my inside radius will be 1 foot. And the difference of those values should be the thickness of your surface, right? If you're going to have a smooth, rounded edge. So I need to do that math in my head with this method. So my inside radius being a foot, I can just say the first surface that, and second surface that, and that's what it's going to do. It just creates this little, you know, rounded surface that goes inside. Then I need to do the same thing, except this one's going to be a radius 2, and I'm going to do it from this surface to, whoop. Oh, that was a fillet curve, sorry. Fillet surface, radius 2, and I'm going to go from here to here, and then it creates my second one. Okay, but that's kind of a pain, because if I'm going to manage it later, I have to actually trim the rest of the surfaces off, like this, and then say trim essentially that. Oh, it won't let me do that one. Probably because it's not fully cutting it. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is that it's not really very well controlled. So here's what I would suggest otherwise. When you're doing volumes like this, my best suggestion is to actually retain what, you know, like usually I keep all of this geometry, right? So I'll call this like, I'll call it base or something like that. And then I'll actually copy that and then paste a new one in and then put it on a new layer. So I'll change it to that layer right here. What did I do with it? There it is. Oops, I have too many. So that way if I turn base off, I'm left with this. And if I modify this, then I still have the original geometry to go back and work with.
So there's like 2 copies in one.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, you know, like you're gonna have to think a little bit ahead, right? Like your professor or critic might not like exactly what you did, but in the event that it's just a small change that needs to be done, you can sort of save iterations of your model, or you could just save the file again. However you want to manage it. This is just another way that I tend to like to do this. I keep some of my base curves in case I need to go that far back. Some, not all. And then I'll keep kind of like a base surface element in case modifying the geometry doesn't quite work out super well, I can go back to the original without having to recreate it. And then I actually have the one that I'm going to work on, and that would be this one. Does that make sense to you? So in case you're wondering, guys, so far all I've done on this is just make a copy of the geometry that I had there already, and I put it on a different layer. Any questions so far? Okay, so taking this geometry and moving it a step forward, what I showed you is a little bit laborious. What I think is a better way to do it is to start doing all of your, rounds and fixes on the corners, and then do your offset surface. Once you create thickness in a complex architectural volume or form or envelope, the modification and modeling process gets exponentially more complicated and time consuming. So what I suggest as a file management, as a time management strategy, is use like work planes. Like this is what I would consider a work plane. Then you can start to modify it from there and turn it into architecture. If I need to go back to my curves and change it so that, maybe maybe this one actually gets, scale 1D, and then I'll say, I want this top one to actually be half as wide, right? And then I just take those curves and I reconstruct it, and I go from there. Like I can take this and that and loft it together, and we'll actually do this to show you how that works, but I can replace that with now a tapering geometry and then push it back over and start playing with it again. So we're talking strategy now, guys. This is file and time management. So anyway, what I want to show you here that's better is now that it is pretty clean, and I'm just going to do sort of one corner of this whole form, I can go through the process of doing fillet surface on all of these. My outer radius being 2, so I'll say this one and that one. And then I can do the same thing up here. Enter again to restart the same command. Then I select this surface and the side surface. And what it's creating are these sort of interior volumes to trim with. And then I'll do the same thing on the top. Top surface, top surface and side surface. What did that do? That turned that on. That was weird. It turned my layer back on, which was funky. So here's something I can't explain super clearly yet. I don't exactly know why sometimes it actually trims it and other times it doesn't. But if it doesn't, then you just need to go through the extra step of trimming it yourself. But this is what it looks like. Activate the trim command, and then you can just select this, and I would just select all 3 of them actually. So trim, and then select the interior ones, that one, and this one, then hit enter. And you should, if it worked properly, it should be able to allow you to just trim out that whole excess surface. And then you can also trim that top corner, this top corner, and it should look a little bit like this. Trim again, I'll select this one, enter, and trim off that little corner. And this generally, that's really hard for you guys to see that on screen, I know, I'm sorry, but this is a pretty clean edge. Let me make this layer something you can actually see. There you go. There you go. You can see that better, right? So we still have a little bit more trimming to do, and I'll do that on the inside. So I'll just trim again and grab this one and that one, enter, and then trim the excess here and the excess there. So are you guys starting to understand kind of how this is working, right? You have to create geometry to delete geometry and sort of, create the volume that you're looking for. And this is what I mean by it's sculptural, but it's controlled sculptural. Any questions so far? Okay. I'll go through it again slower, but
Is it fine if I separated my 2 pieces that were in that one theme?
I don't know what you mean by two pieces in that one thing, but I'll come check it out.
Okay.
Okay? Any other questions? No? Okay.